Ladies and gentlemen, guys and girls, welcome to another episode of the Age of Warfare podcast. I'm Satorian Naturalist Maximus, and as always, that's Negate Aiden Cordia, and we are continuing our series that stemmed from the printing press that led to propaganda, and now we're gonna talk about something else the printing press gave birth to: yellow journalism, or also known as in today's terms, fake news. So, before we get started, as always, Aiden, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing all right, actually. It's again still nice weather. I keep saying it's nice weather. It's worrying, you know. We're going to have some bad weather at some point. But yeah, I'm doing quite well. I had a nice, relaxing day making things earlier, and work hasn't been that difficult because of various reasons. If you watch British news, you will know why. But yeah, apart from that, I'm all good. How about you?
I've just been busy. I mean, all good on the books end. Just been not a busyness in the personal side. Just a lot of things are piling up. Appointments are coming up. Just enough that I have to get done. I got a lot of books to send. So yeah, I'm not never a dull day here, to be honest. But it's always we always make time to entertain our viewers, and we're gonna because we got a cool topic. We got an interesting one here: yellow journalism. Mike, we spoke about in backstage. Yellow journalism is basically a term. It's an American term. It's a United States term. You know, Mike, we spoke about backstage, and in the United Kingdom, they call it. I think you call it tabloid.
Yes, tabloid journalism.
Tabloid journalism, right?
Sometimes referred to as it will come from newspapers called the Red Tops, which we can get into later. But it's a distinctiveness about British press as well. But it's the same thing. It's as again as I said backstage. It's the difference between us Brits saying trousers and Americans saying pants. It's the same thing. Everyone knows what you're on about, but it's just we'll use the terms interchangeably, just so that people know that we're all on the same page, which wasn't a Freudian slip at all.
So Mike I said in the introduction, the printing press. The printing press is a very big invention, as we spoke about 2 episodes ago. It was a very big invention, but unfortunately, there was some unintentional consequences of the printing press, and that made it easier for news to be reported. It made it much more easier for people to report the news, report things that were happening. But unfortunately, as the printing press advanced or became more advanced, it became even easier to spread what we call fake news, or you know things that are not necessarily true, or they were or exaggerated. So, Aiden, it's a good question. Before we get to that, Jack, thank you for coming on over. Thank you, Jack. So, when do you think yellow journalism or fake news really became a big thing? I know we talk about it not in modern times, but I know, but we know better to say that it's a thing that just happened now. That's just been going on since the test of time.
So go back to the origins of this type of thing. It's something we talked about with the printing press when we were talking about even woodblock stuff as well. It was in the English Civil Wars. There was a whole big thing about claiming that the other side was sticking babies on pikes and doing all of the most horrendous things possible, like cannibalism, all of that. And while this had been sort of rumours, and that's always been a thing that everyone said about someone's army, you got these pamphlets saying this quite a lot at the beginning of the printing press, were able to print the literature to do that. So that kind of propaganda as such is into this level of fake news. There probably were instances of that happening, because they do happen, but it wasn't as widespread. It's quite famous that both sides put out this same thing, almost exactly the same thing, and it was about a capture of a city that they control. And neither city has any good evidence for this happening being a widespread thing. so you get these instances in sort of the middle of civil wars and things like that, where one side will do that, but it then starts to become more prominent as we get later on, as we get the advent of newspapers being a thing, of telling people about world news, or the news of, say, in the imperial age in your empire. And this, the US was not immune to this. While the US imperialism is very different to old style imperialism, there was imperialism influencing how all this worked as well. So, in the US, it's got to have been sort of what 1800s really is where it started to really get its grip, with newspapers being more widespread, with people being able to do this type of thing rather than it being those in the middle of a war trying to show the bad side of the other side. You're getting it more in the newspapers, in these regular everyday things, rather than it being other side bad. It's other side bad, but now we're just talking politics, or someone we disagree with, or something we want to get, so we're going to create a bad side so that it makes us look good, type of thing. So this image, where's this image from?
This image is from an old newspaper that was in circulation from 1937 until 1966, and it was called the New York Journal American. You know, it was yeah.
They're fantastic names back then. Like the proper age of newspapers.
And this was sort of a merger between the American and Evening Journal in 1937. Not, but so a lot of people like the New York Journal, but the biggest criticism about the New York Journal was that yellow journalism. There were a lot of inconsistencies on the articles in the New York Journal, which is what so you combine that with television. Television's already become popular in the 60s.
Yeah.
So it would lead to the decline. And what you're looking at here, it's basically a form of yellow journalism right here. What we're looking at.
It's like when you've got a propaganda poster as well. There's always something written on someone's clothing from this time period. Someone's being led somewhere, and then the way that the faces are done as well, and the fact that it says coloured comic supplement kind of gives away where it's going with that.
And then here's a really old one. I'm not sure what this is supposed to be, but this says I am an American fascist. Expose. I can't really tell what the date is, but this you can definitely tell this is yellow journalism, saying I am American.
See, this is the thing. When you get to yellow journalism, this is the thing we said about propaganda. There's always got to be some truth behind it, otherwise people don't. We'll get into, because a lot of yellow journalism actually doesn't have to have truth behind it, but as propaganda it does. So there were a lot of American fascists. There was the American Fascist League, if I'm getting the name right. There was a British Fascist League as well. At the same time, we had Oswald Mosley, is very famous, Lord Ha Ha. So we've got many characters this time. So this will have come out in the early 30s. It'll be around the 30s. It wasn't really until the US entered the war that they started being really anti-fascism as well. So you had those people like Ford was famously pretty okay with fascism.
And here's some of various articles just talking about the polio vaccine back in the 50s. There was a big polio epidemic.
And this is the other side of this as well. It can be used for good in certain sense. The polio vaccine, it did work and it was safe. But as with all vaccines, you're going to get a very small minority of people where it's not going to work for them. You're immunocompromised. And back in this time period, the immunocompromised weren't really tracked down. That we didn't have the science and technology to be able to work that type of thing out. But what you do is you get everyone to say it's safe, and it relieves the worry of people to go and get the vaccine because they're like, well, this is science, and like, well, I don't understand it, So, and we see this to this very day of people misunderstanding vaccines, not quite understanding them. So you can use it in this sense as kind of a propaganda tool to get people to do something for the common good, as it were. So the polio vaccine in the US, very famous for being one of the most successful
the 55.
ones.
Yeah, it says the 55 vaccine will be even better. Yeah. A lot of people will beg to differ about that. And then you had the smallpox vaccine for smallpox.
Yeah, which comes from that's the earliest vaccine. Well, the earliest vaccine was I can't remember the guy's name. Was it Jenner? And he noticed the milkmaids, so the women who had milked the cows on farms in the UK, wouldn't get smallpox, and he was wondering why. And it's because they were exposed to cowpox, because they were dealing with cows quite a lot. Cowpox, it can affect a human, but it's not going to kill us. It's like getting chickenpox these days. It may feel a bit crap for a few days, and then you just deal with it, and then you're done. And he used cowpox as a vaccine against smallpox, and that started the whole vaccine thing as well. So you had they do work, but it's the never talking about the bad points of it. But as soon as you talk about the bad points of it, you suddenly get into the territory we have these days, where you get all of the misinformation about the vaccines cause autism thing, which was a lie, a complete lie. And the guy went, well, he was stripped of his being a doctor and everything. Yeah. So
and here's a good here's a good picture telling what journalism really is for those it's like the basic definition: sensational style of reporting used by some newspapers in the late 1800s. Look at the date, late 1800s. So yeah, this has been going on for quite a while, Aidan. This is not just a new thing going on now. Is it?
As soon as you've got access to newspapers, you can do this. As you were saying before about having the printing press, it then gave rise to people now have the ability to do this.
Is the yellow journalism worse now? Yeah, I mean, of course, it's worse now.
Yeah.
But it's always been bad. So let's go over the exaggerate stories. That you go from exaggeration to just making things up. You lie about it. You just there's not even any, like you said, not even any truth to it. It's just a lie. Then you had Pulitzer and Hearst were in a battle to sell more newspapers, and this is something I really found very interesting while researching Pulitzer and Hearst. Because they were competing newspaper chains.
It's amazing how much they had in that competition side within newspapers, that it was such a big thing. It's the equivalent of Coca-Cola and Pepsi in the 80s and 90s. It's that level of competition between them. We don't think about newspapers being in competition at that level, but they were, hence all of this happening.
So I'm sure you heard of clickbaiting, right? Yep, you try to click on an article and read it, and you find out, this is full of, this is full of crap. But you clicked on it, right? That's what fake news is today, clickbaiting, trying to get engagement, trying to get people to engage, or what we call rage baiting. I'm sure you heard that term.
Rage baiting is even worse.
Yeah.
I hate rage. I get angry about rage baiting, which is kind of ironic. Really, when you think about
it. But this was their version of clickbaiting. This was how they got you to clickbait. This is how they baited you into believing it by putting some sensational headlines on the newspaper. So eventually, back then, like you make money very quick. Back then, you made money with every newspaper sold. So it was basically their version of getting you the quick, or getting you the muck.
Yeah, and it's that exact same thing. So from a UK perspective, with tabloids, you had this. As I explained, red tops. So we have what we call broadsheets. Broadsheets were some of the earliest ones. They're ones that are quite famous, things like the Times, the Financial Times. You've got these newspapers, physically bigger. They were broad sheets of paper, whereas the tabloid journalism used smaller sheets of paper, and often they'd have a red top to them. So think the Daily Mail, which obviously made massive inroads into the US. The Daily Star was another one. I could go on, but you get the idea that there's a group, and their focus would be these. It's a hard-hitting headline, but it's surface level journalism. It's getting, as you say, it's that clickbait journalism. You're trying to get people to read your newspaper because you make money from them reading the newspaper. You're not too fussed if your story isn't quite as accurate. Whereas the broadsheets had to pride themselves on being accurate about those details of what they had. And then this is where you get a lot of the red top newspapers, the tabloid press in the UK, for focusing on things like celebrities and things like that, because you can rile up a population very easily by going, well, what's the standard moral stance on this thing? You just find a celebrity who has done the opposite of that thing, splash it all over the front of our newspapers, or just a rumor that that's a thing. There we are. Stick it on the front of the newspaper. As long as it's a rumor, you're protected under your under journalism charters and things like that, and so that you can publish it, and then people are going to buy it. Like, oh, what did they do? I want to find out the story. Do I want to follow this person? Do I want to keep up with this person? Is this person a bad person? Which is what we see a lot of now online as well, with people being doxxed. Like it's even getting really bad with deepfake as well. Now there's like Tim Ferriss had to actually put something up on his page. He's quite a prominent entrepreneur, and he's actually had to put something up on his page like that. There are deep fakes of him trying to get people to buy stocks and shares, to manipulate the stocks and shares market for the people putting it up, so that they can make money, because he's well known for giving good advice to entrepreneurs and what they do. But they've used his face on a deep fake to be able to do that, which is exactly yellow journalism. You're creating a lie. The lie is that Tim Ferriss never said this, but you're going to trust it because you see Tim Ferriss, you see him saying a thing, he's a trustworthy person, and then someone gets their outcome from it, which is that people are buying these stocks and shares so that they know they can manipulate the market, which is like it's verging on like high-level fraudulent crime as well, but that's a separate thing that we can get into of some of the knock-on effects of what this stuff does, which is quite appropriate for the last thing on this list.
The NAS. But I kind of wanted to, before we get to the NAS thing, though, I kind of want to build more upon what you said, the influence, like in today's world, we have what we call influencers, right?
Yes.
You know, so people that you look up to, Mike, for the conservatives, like Joe Rogan, and for the liberals, the Young Turks. For the liberals, you know,
it used to have Sean Hannity used to be really big until he kind of collapsed his whole thing as well, because he used to be one of the go-tos about. That was only about 10 years ago as well. It's so fast moving these days, but yeah, it's those types of people who are even a part of old style media as well.
Yeah, so basically, so you know, for me, like I said, I'm a centralist, so I try not to get caught up in influencers. I'm not too big into influencers, but I know they're a thing. I mean, Joe Rogan is a really big influencer for the conservatives. You know, and sometimes, and I'll be honest, Adrian, sometimes some things he says do make sense. He's not always biased. Sometimes he does tell the truth. But that's the thing, though, Adrian. Sometimes they tell the truth for what it is. Sometimes, that's the key word. Sometimes. That's the key word. Not all the time. The irony
is, Joe Rogan, he used to be one of those people, he would float questions. He'd be like, this doesn't seem right. You'd float the question, you get on a guest, they talk about it, and then obviously you come to a conclusion. That's what you expect of those things. Like Joe Rogan doesn't know this, so he gets people on to talk about this. So he should come, had a look at it and go, I don't understand this. Get this guy on. we'll talk about this thing. All right, cool. So now you're more informed about this situation. He was always slightly out there on things as well, but he was followed by a lot of people who had more left-wing leaning views. So there's a lot of people that used to recommend him to me, and I was like, there's something off about him, and I can't put my finger on it. But in recent years, over the last 5 or so years, he's gone really hardcore into the conservative, US conservative side of things as well. And that was what I put a finger on. He's playing dumb to a lot of things, and then trying use that to back him up. But as he's been called out more and more on doing that, he's just gone full on onto the conservative side, and he just doesn't really care about it anymore, to be fair, as well. Because, as you say, he gets his views, he gets his clicks, he gets his money.
Right, exactly. And I'll even go as far as saying, even here in Puerto Rico, there's a good influencer. I really love him. You know, he's a great influencer. He's a great journalist. I like him. But some people like to criticize him because he tends to lean more towards the left. But in my opinion, he's definitely more of a centralist. But but some people don't like him because.
Yeah, it's a big problem with the modern day world is that, especially in the US, everything's running so far to the right. It is across Europe as well. So things before that were centrist, some people are like, oh yeah, but he's a bit left wing. It's like, he's not left wing. If he's doing the same thing he's always been doing, he's been a centrist. And some of the old centre right people are now centre left people, which is really, really astonishing. It's like our Prime Minister.
I know, it's crazy.
You take that like 10, 15 years ago, he'd have been solidly in the middle of the Conservative Party, and he's the Prime Minister for the left-wing party now, and he's doing stuff that people who are normally on the left are like, yeah, that's all right. I mean, let's not get into UK politics at the moment because it is a mess. It is glorious to watch because it is just such a mess. But it's that type of thing. The US is exactly the same at the moment. A lot of the politics side is a mess, which is where this yellow journalism starts to then struggle and have issues as well.
Right.
One of the things I want to bring up are things like the Babylon Bee and
yes.
what was the other one?
The Onion.
The Onion. They had come out. The Onion actually stopped in Trump's first term, stopped putting out stories because about 2 weeks after they put out this crazy story, it would happen, and they're like, we can't do satire anymore. As well, this is where satire and yellow journalism kind of get intermingled as well, where you end up with this situation where we've got such access these days and so much ability to put things out there that someone can do subtle satire, but because everyone can watch it, some people will take it at face value and not realize that it's satire, will think it's an actual thing, and then we'll start acting upon the thing, which then makes that satire into essentially yellow journalism at the same time. So you end up with this blurring of a line between the two things, which is a factor of the internet, essentially, and the way that we communicate in the modern age as well. Whereas obviously back then with papers, it was a lot simpler. It was, you read this paper was saying this thing, and this paper had this bias. It's like reading a historical document. You identify the bias, you identify your bias reading the paper, whatever thing you're reading, and then you go, right, cool, I don't believe that because I don't like believing that, but that's my bias. I don't believe that because that really goes into their view and probably not right. This other stuff in the middle is probably all of the truth type of things. Right. So you could work that out to a certain extent. Yellow journalism doesn't care about any of that. They say what they want to say for that week to sell that paper. They don't care who it hurts. That is what it is, as long as they get their money. Yeah.
That's correct. That's exactly right. So I just find it really interesting. But that's the power of influencing, and that's why this is why for me personally, I try not to get too attached to any influencers. Even the one I like him in Puerto Rico, even him, he's a great journalist, but sometimes he does let his Methodist leanings get the best of him, and sometimes he does come up with a crunker. You know what I mean? He does come up with something that's like, you're going a little too far to the left, buddy. You're not going to get me to believe that.
Exactly, and that's the thing. And this is what I was saying about when you get people that are quite good at those types of things. you can tell they've got these leadings in them, so you can point that out. You as you said, where you see it, you go, oh, actually that one, that's you showing this leading here a bit too much, right? You're getting into opinion rather than fact. At this point,
and this is where people start to call him people here in Puerto Rico. I mean, I can only speak to where I am. They call him like a Marxist, Neanism, Leninism,
Leninism, Marxism. It's a pretty strong set of terms. Also, they're completely separate. So,
in Spanish, they call it comunista or socialista. Communist and socialist in Spanish.
This is right. So I'm going to get on my soapbox about this, because this is something that's and it's one of the reasons why this stuff works so well these days is we go to the extremes, and this is part of yellow journalism. You go to the extreme.
Right.
Someone does something that's on a left wing, therefore they are this. This is the whole calling people Nazis, calling people communists. Socialists and communists, two different things. Socialists and communists actually were at war with each other for a very long time. Marxism, Leninism, Stalinism, all completely different forms, and actually you had some of them assassinated by the other ones. It's like they're internal fractures within a thing as well. It's like saying all Christians believe this, completely disregarding the fact that Catholics and Protestants have different views, and then Protestants are a tree amongst themselves that encompass wide-ranging things from High Church, Church of England, to Mormonism. They're both Protestant, but they're so wildly different. It's unbelievable. So you've got this spectrum thing that goes on, and it's when you cheapen the terms, and this is where it comes from. Is this yellow journalism of this person has done something that we could arguably say agrees with this thing? For example, a great example that I've always loved is vegetarians are Nazis. So that's a yellow journalism headline. Why?
Right.
Because Hitler was a Nazi. If you look at the laws across Europe for animal welfare and animal rights, a lot of that comes from Hitler loving animals. So is animal rights and animal welfare then Nazism? Well, for yellow journalism, it certainly is. But it actually isn't. Because just because one person, two people with opposite ends of the spectrum agree on one thing doesn't make them both the same.
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is where this all comes into it.
Yeah, and speaking, going back to my Puerto Rico centric, reality here, because
please do. I'm absolutely not about it.
The thing about it is, Aiden, you have to understand. I'm going to be honest with you, man. We're pretty conservative here. Shocker, I know you might be a little shocked, but we're actually pretty conservative here in Puerto Rico. So socially, we're pretty conservative here. So. This is why you hear comunista, socialista just being thrown out random, because we don't want to, because people here don't want to be like Cuba or Venezuela.
I was just about to say that. Yeah, Cuba isn't that many miles away from you, really, is it?
Same thing with Venezuela. Same thing about Venezuela. And I tend to be one of them. I don't want to be social. I don't want to be in a communist, because I see how bad it gets, man. So but you have to understand. This is why such terms are being thrown out there, like it's cheap fireworks, because people here are conservative. They don't want to be. And I'll even go as far as my mother's country, which is from El Salvador. And if you remember the Salvadorian Civil War in the 80s, the socialists tried to get into El Salvador and make it communist. There was a civil war because Nicaragua tried to get in, and Nicaragua today is a Marxist dictatorship.
I find it absolutely crazy how South America, you got chunks of South America that went that way. Yet you had chunks of South America that were on the Nazi side of things as well. So you've got this whole incredibly right and incredibly left-wing countries. There doesn't seem to be an in-between in a lot of South American countries.
No,
Puerto Rico seems to be the most centrist of countries, and as you have
yeah,
experience with, it
to a degree,
leans a little
yes.
conservative.
I mean, to a degree, we are, Aiden. You're not wrong, but it really depends where you go in Puerto Rico, because in San Juan they tend to be a little more progressive, but you go outside of San Juan, like where I am, it's really conservative. Once it gets in my neck of the woods, and
yes,
even when we're talking
San Juan's large population area, presumably, because
yes,
large
but once you
population
get
areas
down,
tend to be more left wing.
but once you get down here, it tends to be more right wing when it comes to social and religious issues. You know, and I'm not just saying it just to say it. I say it because this is what I see. This is based on real observations. You know, like in fact, you go as far, like Halloween. We don't really celebrate it here in Halloween much here.
I remember us discussing this on the podcast as well. There's a lot of things like that were quite strict. Yeah.
So I mean, but this is why some people will say we're like we're not Nazis, okay? But but because we're a little more to the right, that's why that's where the Nazi that's where the Nazi word gets thrown in, and that's this is where you said the extremism comes into play.
Yeah.
I mean, so it just gets really complex. Like my mother, she tends to be more right wing, but only because of her experiences in El Salvador. She had to escape from the Civil War.
It's a lot of Eastern Europeans who I've worked with around my age, or a little bit older, especially, tend to be quite right wing. And it's through experience, because obviously that was the Soviet bloc. Their childhood was the Eastern Europe fighting back against the USSR, freeing themselves from this yoke of communism.
Which makes sense because, I'm going to get into a bit of a tangent here, but this is why we like doing tangents. You know the AfD, right, in Germany?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what I'm going to get into. You know what I'm going with this, right? East Germany, they tend to vote more for the AfD, and you know why? Because East Germany was
communist.
Yep, Soviet.
Like after it all going back together again, you ended up with the same thing sort of happening in West Germany as well, where they went a little bit more right wing at the same time, because they were getting angry with all the people from Eastern Germany coming over to Western Germany, because obviously there was nothing in East Germany, but there was stuff in West Germany. So you get the same things you get in the UK, where people will be nominally quite open and welcoming to everyone, but as soon as you put one barrier in between that means they're not directly onto that, you see all of the stuff that we have about the anti-immigration stuff as well. It's not that we don't like the people, it's that you'll find that a lot of people are like, hey, hang on a minute, we've worked hard for this and we're struggling now. Why do these people get X? And that then creates a situation where people tend to go slightly more right-wing and more protectivist as well, because protectivism tends to be on the right-wing end of the spectrum. It's not technically right-wing, it's protectivism that people are leaning towards.
And it's interesting you brought that up, because my mother tends to think that way too, protectivism, because because she came to America, did all the legal paperwork, and she's legal now. She's legal, so she thinks that all immigrants should be able to do what she did. Get in legally, because she did it legally. So it's like I get into a fight with her because sometimes she's like a little disdainful. I said, do you realize you come from that same country where these immigrants come from, right? I understand you're legal and all that, but she says, well, but they want a handout. They're trying to get in there with a handout.
Yeah, it's the same conversation over here. Is just you just rename where the people are coming from,
Right, exactly, right. Exactly.
And it's all over the world, but that's the world economic situation. As the world economic situation gets worse, you see that people move slightly to the right in that protectivism bubble, because it's called pulling up the ladder. If you are someone who has received that, but you don't want other people doing that. I've done this properly. I've done this, so I've got this. Therefore, I'm going to pull up the ladder now. But that always sounds really harsh when you say that, because it's not quite that simple. But in general terms, it's that idea. We see it here with some of our conservative MPs. Quite a few Indians who are conservative MPs, and some of the stuff they're putting in place against immigration from India. It's like, but you say you're proud of your Indian heritage in one sentence, and then at the same time you're doing your best to stop other Indians doing the same thing that you did. Because there's more to the situation, obviously, but it's
because they feel like if they came from India and did it the white way, they moved to England, and and they did everything legally. Everyone should be able to do it legally,
Exactly.
So. And all right, so before we move on, Dungeon Dan, welcome, Dungeon Dan.
Oh yeah, long time no speak, actually.
Yeah, but would the wood be Waxies?
Witsies. I do not know this word. It's rare that I don't know words.
Yeah, you might want to explain that, Dungeon Dan. I think we might be missing something there. If I'm being honest. Or we're missing an inside joke or something. Yeah. Usually I get Dungeon Dash jokes, but today I really don't. So if it's an inside joke I'm missing, please feel free to explain. No, that's okay. That's okay.
When you Google it with political.
That's okay, Dungeon Dan. Let's see what Google's.
Okay. Yeah, this is coming up with some. Yeah, I think this is related to exactly what we're talking about.
I was commenting on your Nazi discussion. Whitesies.
Right, yeah, because there's a whole other political thing if you write it Witsy. Some political things that are very similar to what we were just talking about, ironically.
Yeah.
Isn't it weird how words can connect bizarrely as well?
So now let's get to the final the idea on the thing here. It says if the US went to war, they would sell more newspapers, which makes sense. But before we get into that, Dungeon Dan wants to know what did Google pull up, Aiden? He wants to actually know what did Google pull up.
And looks like an African politician called Nanabi Wits. So Witsy being a term for people who follow them, and the line that they gave me is, "I expect you to convince me more on your policy of why I should vote for you. You are here giving rhetoric and equalisation," which is just very appropriate for that. I was like, that's very appropriate for this discussion, but I don't know if Dungeon Dan has a secret knowledge of the internal politics of Africa. He might do. I'm not going to question. But yeah, it was that quote. It's just really weirdly interesting thing to find on that.
So, all right, so we got that tangent out the way. Good. Thank you, Dungeon Dan, for that little tangent. Now we're going to move on to the final point, which is obvious. If the U.S. goes to war, they're going to sell more newspapers. Now when they sell more newspapers, the economy will go up. But the defense budget goes up. They say you go to war, everything goes up.
Yeah, it's conflict. means more money starts moving hands, and the way the capitalism has been running since about 1940s-ish, or even before that, actually, go right the way back to about 1900. The more that money moves around, the more money can be made as well, because it buoys up stock markets. The more movement there is in the stock market, the more money can be made on the stock market. So you can make more money doing a thing. Warfare creates that, because then you've got constant ups and downs, but they're in multiple different industries. So, for example, you want to make more weapons, you can need more steel. But where you're getting your steel from? Are you allied to this person, or are you no longer allied to this person? How are you going to have to change this trade deal? Now, if there's a new trade deal, someone getting on the ground floor, then they can work that out. Then they can bet on that, on betting on the futures type of things, of trying to work out that this will go up, and they can make money out of that. So they're using this money. It comes down to stock market, Wall Street stuff that they're doing with this. Also, newspapers. As soon as you have a war, people will look at that war. They will want to know what the hell is going on, because especially if your country is at war, you need to know what's going on. If another country is at war that's close by, you want to know what's going on. Look at the early days of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. People, I remember sitting here, and every day I'd spend about an hour a day going through the current news and checking statistics and working out what was going on, looking at footage from the ground and everything like that. Incredibly interested in what exactly was going on. These days, I just wait for something to pop up, because it's been going on long enough and it's stagnated, so it doesn't have that. But a new, fresh war, that will say you newspapers, because people want to know what's going on, and that's how people found out at the time.
And yeah, war sells, like I said, Dungeon Den, it sells more papers everywhere, correct? And it also ups the level of propaganda. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it does. It does. You don't have to imagine it. It does. It does increase the amount of propaganda. Yeah. I mean, look at the 2000 war. After the Twin Towers went down, we went to Afghanistan and Iraq. I mean, yeah, newspapers were sending by the bunches, and there was not a, misleading articles about what was actually going on in Afghanistan, and who was actually responsible for the 2001 World Trade Center collapse. So you don't even have to go too far to see, the effects of going to war. It became a campaign to take down Osama bin Laden. That's what all Americans wanted. We all wanted Osama bin Laden to go down. So we would buy the newspaper to see, did we get Osama yet? Looking for the next article that says bin Laden is dead or captured. So yeah, I mean, it definitely takes the level of propaganda up. And Dungeon Dan also goes as far as saying, I did the same, Aiden. Until maybe 2008, when I realized how much deception was being put out, I stopped reading papers. And that's the thing about yellow journalism, that sometimes it could be a situation where sometimes too much general journalism could actually lead to people stop reading the newspaper. Or it can actually go do the opposite of what you wanted to do. Instead of sending news more papers, you start to sell less, because people are saying, I can't trust you no more. You start to lose the trust. And that's the consequence.
One of the things I found very interesting, so when I worked in archaeology, we used to use newspapers to line seed trays when we were drying things out.
Yeah, I'm with you, Dungeon. Yeah, I can't watch the news too much myself either.
And so we used that obviously to dry things out. Getting hold of newspapers was easy. You just rather than putting your newspapers in the recycling, bring them into work and we can use them. We used to have to. It then got to a point where we were asking people. There's one, the Metro. There is free newspaper on buses and trains. Is where you get it. So when anyone was on a bus and a train, they saw Metro. You barely see them these days as well, even on buses and trains. You might see them at a station, especially in London. We asked people to pick up a handful of them so that we'd have newspapers. People were stopping buying newspapers. Part of this was the advent of the internet as well, where people go on the internet. This then had a knock-on effect as well. And the Daily Mail was one that was really obvious to this, of they went hyper into the getting clicks. Their journalism wasn't good to start off with, and it got worse. It was constant clickbait from Mail Online.
Right.
And because they needed people to view, it wasn't that you go and look at newspapers and you go and pick one up. You go, well, that headline interests me, I'll take this newspaper today. You're going online, they've got to try and get people to come to them. So they've got an extra step in there. So they were putting out this constant clickbait stuff, which meant that the editing side of it went downhill rapidly, and absolutely destroyed it. And the Mail was never great, but occasionally it came up with some decent stories and broke some news. But these days it is just clickbait. It's like some strange title, and it turns out that someone accidentally trimmed someone's hedge a little bit too much when they didn't realise where the property boundary was. That'll be what the story is, but they'll make it into like a person invades neighbour's house with chainsaw, and it's like, well, it's not really what happened, really, was it?
Yeah, it's basically what this says. Yellow journalism today isn't all that different from yellow journalism in the past. Though it does seem to be even more prevalent now, Mike, you said, with the internet. Now, Mike, and you said, supposed to be so focused on factual information presented objectively, right, or neutral. Yellow journalism is anything but that. And because it's the war for clicks and views seem to create an epidemic of sensational headlines that are anything but objective and not even true. Whenever you see sensationalized headlines that scandalize or exaggerate, you're seeing yellow journalism. Sometimes you see that really exaggerated, like fat, this guy's a fascist. You can't really jump and say, oh, this is true, because it's exaggerated to a degree.
Yeah, it could be that he's weird enough. I used to have some quite long discussions with a guy who was actually a fascist. He was he was sort of a neo-Nazi, but he wasn't. He was part of one of those types of moves. I had some proper discussions with him, but he wasn't one of these knee-jerk reaction types. He wasn't. He hadn't come from it from a perspective of, oh, these foreign people come to our country taking all our stuff, and you turn around and go, well, no, they're not really, are they? Because they're not stealing your job because you've still got your job. It's quite simple here, mate. He wasn't. He was more on a political side of it, from actual the doctrines that come with it of this is how a country should be run, rather than that side. And actually, if you look at some of the fascism, it's not actually that racist at all. Some of the branches of fascism that you see. And that's why I was really interested in talking to this guy. Yes, obviously he was racist to quite an extent on certain things, but it's in general he wasn't racist from that Nazi level of these people are not really humans, they're underhumans type of level. It was some old rhetoric that had crept in to his things. So you do even get this within these different people, as you say. There's someone's called Nazi or a fascist, and this is when again where I said it's like that person might be a fascist, but they could be that type of fascist that comes through from when you look at their viewpoints. Say it's like there's some economic style viewpoints that are actually from the way that fascism works. And they're just a different viewpoint on how you run your economy. They've got nothing to do with race. They've got nothing to do with putting people into camps. There's nothing to do with gassing people or invading half the world and forcing everyone to bow down to your leader. They've got another side to it as well. So picking on that, and this comes back to what I said before, picking on that one particular view and then going, well, it's fascist then. But it's like, well, someone's just literally turned around and gone, well, actually, this isn't too bad a point of view. Like, you just get completely sure. I think that's a good answer. It's crazy. The biggest place for people to get news in the UK now is apparently Facebook, as well. Not people go, oh, it's because people telling people. It's not because people telling other people things. It's because a lot of the newspapers use Facebook, which is slightly older generation people actually care about the news, who would be on there. And you ended up with a situation now where you get local groups, and there's a couple my wife's a member of for sort of local stuff. So local news, you'll find is gossip. One of them is actually called like Reading Gossip Girls, which is quite funny. It's obviously a play on the Gossip Girls being a show, but you get a lot of information from those groups. But because it's more of a discussion rather than an actual journalism side of thing, the information is slightly more accurate. It'll be, oh, well, I heard this, well, I heard this. Yes, it's rumor mill, but when the more people that you have that say, I heard this, you can tease out the correct information. If you know what you're doing, obviously, you can tease out the correct information quite well. So you get this change back to what happened before the printing press of people talking to each other for the news.
Yep, pretty much, Dungeon Dan.
As well.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it really has. But yeah, UK news is.
I think
like most people in the UK actually follow number 10, the Prime Minister. A lot of people do. We've got a lot of our news, and it's just straight from the horse's mouth. The stuff they'll say. You just read the comments on it.
And now, I see some British people refer to the Reform UK Party as the fascist party in the United Kingdom.
It's because it is. Quite frankly, I'm not going to beat around the bush here. It's not yellow journalism. It's Nigel Farage's latest iteration for things. Nigel Farage is a big supporter. He literally dumped his party just before an election, and then went off to the US to support Trump, because you can't be a politician in the UK while supporting a politician from another country. Most countries have the same rules. You're not allowed to do that because it's considered treasonous to do that. Not that I ever had a problem with it. This is the same person who was instrumental in us leaving the EU. His reason for it: the fisheries industry was completely destroyed. The EU fisheries minister for Britain really should be investigated, because he's clearly sold us down the river for all of this. You should vote for me because I'll be in charge. Lo and behold, he was the EU's fishery minister. The EU even then started investigating like he'd asked, and discovered that all he'd been doing was playing golf and stealing government money for not doing anything. And so they just took his pension away and went, piss off, mate. You're not doing your job, and you sold your country down the river. It's all to line his own pockets. It's constantly to line his own pockets. Reform UK has gone. So this comes up from UKIP. So when UKIP became really prominent, right. So I have to explain this properly. So UKIP started off really long ago, and it was all to do with there are problems with the EU. I agreed with those problems with the EU. I didn't think leaving at that point was the correct decision. But I was open to someone making a good argument for it. And most of the UK were, hence why what happened. You ended up with Farage taking over this party. And I was talking to someone at work who was thinking about it. I went, well, show me their manifesto. Their manifesto was literally the Labour manifesto, copied and pasted, but with some really racist stuff just dropped in there all the way through. So what other group of people have we ever noticed in history that took a load of left-wing ideas, put socialism in their name, and then just had a load of racist stuff tacked onto it so they could do the racist stuff while people thought they were going to do good things? Let me have a think about that. Would that be the National Socialist Party? Right. It's trying to line his own pockets. They have some. It's a protest vote, but but no one's voting for the people we're protesting against. So you've ended up with this situation. However, they've won a few hundred council seats. We have several thousand council seats. They are still the smallest party in the UK. They have one MP. Last time that same group of people were in power there and got a councillor, that councillor lasted for 2 weeks before they were chucked out for vicious racism on the level of a Nazi. So yeah, people calling them fascist, is yellow journalism to a certain extent, because I'm sure they're not all fascists, but quite frankly, enough of them have been proven to be fascists.
Well, according to what I see, they are what they call a populist party. Populism, which is something
they are populist. Yeah, it's like Donald Trump is. Donald Trump's a populist. I don't think Donald Trump is either right wing or left wing. Donald Trump's a populist. He will say whatever people want to hear to get his thing. He's a populist. He's not right wing. He is not left wing. He's a populist. That is my big thing about this: the rise of populism. There's demagogues and all that.
Well, that's an interesting.
No. That's a whole episode in and of itself. But yeah, you're not far off.
Well, I mean, I guess so. I guess so. Dungeon Dan, and I want to.
We were doing that way before.
And I actually wanted to answer Dungeon Dan's question. You know, Slice of Heaven has had its fair share of fascism. Not exactly fascism. It's actually been the opposite end of things. There's been extreme left-wingism, because you see, there's been there was a party back in the 70s that was pushing for independence of Puerto Rico, and they were extreme left. They were extreme, not white, but going the other way, but they resorted to violence. They would go to New York City, bomb cars and all that, and they would just take it to the extreme. There was a guy called Oscar Lopez. Is his name? Look him up. Oscar Lopez Rivera. Yeah, Oscar Lopez Rivera. Yeah, he's basically like the Maduro of the wannabe Maduro of Puerto Rico, Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela. He's the wannabe. He was the wannabe.
He's actually got militant as part of his of what he is. Yeah, he seems like a lovely person, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, but Aiden, this is why not a Puerto Ricans tend to lean more towards the towards the white side of politics, because of idiots like Oscar Lopez. He kind of made the left wing more like a bunch of hoodlums,
Yeah. Yeah, and it is the big thing. It was like the whole Antifa thing.
Now, when it comes to fascism, actual fascism, Dungeon, I mean, we have a political party, but it's a very weak party that's right-wing populist. They call it the Project Dignity. It's like a Christian democracy kind of party. And you would figure it would have enough success because there's not a Christians here in Puerto Rico. But it hasn't really taken off, believe it or not.
The Angela Merkel's part of the Christian Democrats, right? It was one of the biggest parties in Germany for many years. It's their failures that came out of some of their parties what's led to the rise of the AfD. Weirdly enough, ironically, Angela Merkel was part of the Communist Party. She grew up in East Germany. I think she may have even been in Berlin. And she was, as you had to be, she had to join the youth organizations and things as well. So yeah, so you even get some major world politicians that have done this exact thing that we're talking about. Have gone, well, I've seen what it's like on this other side. Let's go to the other side, please.
Yeah,
it seems a lot nicer over there.
Mm-hmm. But and not to mention, and I will also add one more thing about Puerto Rico. We tend to not love Obama. We tend to hate Obama because he pardoned Oscar Lopez. He pardoned him, and for us, that's considered a punch in the gut, because he made us look really bad, and then you just go pardon him. So it could explain why not Puerto Ricans tend to go to the right, and they tend to Mike Donald Trump more because to them he's not Obama again. He's not going to pardon idiots like Oscar Lopez, or he's not going to put in not Promesa, the junta, which is supposed to be a watchdog committee to watch out for corruption in Puerto Rico, and it's been an absolute failure. Yeah, so it's very complicated, man, and the reason I bring this up because journalism doesn't really help the matters. It just energizes that part of the island. It energizes those people. All this journalism out there, sensationalism, like we call it. So
one thing with yellow journalism and modern politics, obviously this originally comes out of this fight between the newspapers and them essentially trying to start a war. They were successful, the US-Cuban War, but this influence and this combination of propaganda and sales as well, and pushing a story that will harm, this could go along with Hillary Clinton and the time of the reveal for it was the emails part of it, wasn't it? It was the revealing the investigation at that particular time. Was them revealing it wasn't a problem. That was a thing that they should have been doing. They should have been doing all of that. You need to check those things. Them revealing it at that specific moment was essentially propaganda, and the way it got taken up ended up as this yellow journalism. And I used to quite a lot listen to a podcast, and it's a very good podcast actually. One of the guys was a comedian, did a lot of satire stuff. And when he was working with podcasts, he had a guest who was a lawyer. The guy owned a law firm, and he'd done some really important stuff in lawyering before he owned his law firm, so he knew his onions. And so they decided to make a podcast, and what they do is they take these political stories and look at this yellow journalism, and they go, well, it's been reported as this. But they take the law stories, obviously, because I was a lawyer, and then they go, well, from a legal standing, does this have any merit? Is this a thing that's going to happen? Or is this someone just trying to push this story? So you see this. One of the things I find quite interesting that you've got what is a very successful podcast that is essentially based on yellow. If you didn't have this yellow journalism, they wouldn't have their podcast. So you have this reaction thing with the media as well, where we do have a lot of yellow, but we also have the opposite of that, of people trying to work out what is real and what isn't real, where people are lying, where people aren't lying, where people lie on the spectrum, to give us an idea of, well, I'm reading this from news people, they lean right, therefore they're more likely to think, say, from the US, they're more likely to think that Donald Trump hasn't done something quite so bad, or they're more likely to think if it's someone from the Democrats that they've done slightly worse, type of thing. So you can get that idea. So you get a lot of these people that start cropping up as well. I think the problem nowadays isn't so much the yellow journalism. I think the problem is information overload. It's no one knows what to think because we've been bombarded left, right, and centre. It's not like back in the days with newspapers where you look at the headlines in newspapers and go, well, they all look crap, so I'm not going to buy one. Whereas these days you go, oh, I'm a bit bored, I'm just going to scroll through social media. And then you're bombarded with like 10 posts about, oh, well, this thing that's happened, oh, this thing that's happened, and this charity's fighting against this because this person did this. And you can't get away from it these days unless you cut yourself off from social media. And even if you cut yourself off from social media, if you want to use YouTube or you want to use anything on the social media to actually interact with people in any way, shape, or form, then you're going to have this crop up constantly, and you can't get away from this bombardment. Like walking down the street, there'll be posters, there'll be stickers on lampposts, the whole work. That's still a big thing in the UK. I know I live in a town with technically 2 universities, but yeah, stickers on lampposts from sort of like parties. Usually quite left-wing ones as well, actually, because the right-wing ones had a campaign several times over trying to do them for destruction of property when they were fighting amongst each other. Oh no, that was weird. That was bizarre that happened. But yeah, you do see this. You can literally be standing at some traffic lights. You'll turn around to make sure you press the button, and there'll be a sticker with something political on it. So even in our daily lives, this has crept through from the internet into physical as well, because we still got all of the old physical ways of doing it, but we now have the internet way of using it, and the only way we can get around that is by learning more about it and go. We've got the whole internet. If you see something, go and look it up. Go and look up the history of the thing. Go and look up why they're doing the thing. Go and look up what else they've done. It's all there for people to do, but people don't do that because they don't have time to do it, which is why the social media stuff is dangerous, because you're there for 30 seconds to go have a quick scroll through, see what your mates are up to. You get hit with this thing, you go, I should probably look that up. But you don't look it up because you've only had 30 seconds. So you go off, you do your thing, and then that thing's all twiddling around in your brain. So that might then influence you, which is there then when it gets into propaganda levels from yellow journalism. So yellow journalism is now crossing over into being propaganda, but propaganda's technically from the government, but actually now you get people working for the government on their behalf doing it, not officially, but because they support them. And that level of propaganda is just so constant in our lives, we can't escape it.
Yep.
The Bay Post, yes, yeah. The one thing that I found most hilarious was that became a massive capitalist thing, that they ended up selling super expensive clothing that was made in sweatshops with that written on. I was like, it's yeah, you can't win even if you have a good message, but because it became a meme, like memes as propaganda. Oh my dear God, memes is yellow journalism. Memes, memes is yellow journalism.
That's the new. What they are. That's the new yellow journalism. The new form of yellow journalism.
Yeah. And how we interact with memes as well. When you see a meme, it's a woman shouting at the cat table. I'm sure we've all seen the one where someone's just put some batteries on a table that form the rough shape, and we all know exactly what the meme is because it's entered our consciousness. Now it shows how propaganda works as well. That you see it enough times, that's in your heads. You're never forgetting that. You're going to see something slightly like it, and you're going to think of that thing, which is how all of this yellow journalism works. It's a very powerful tool that changes things. The problem is everything's so messed up at the moment. It's like, we can swear, like it's like throwing shit at a wall and seeing what sticks at this point. It's like it might do, it might not, and if it sticks, it's probably not going to be what you intentionally wanted to do in the first place. Yeah.
Well, anyway, we are over the hour, man. Another episode. We're past the hour, man. There's a not to talk about. But we have come to the end of this episode. Really interesting episode. We got a little bit of a tangent. We got some hard facts. We had some, hot takes as well. But that's part of the show. So thank you guys for coming today. And Aiden, you're gonna pick out the topic for the next show. So I'm leaving it up to you to pick the topic for the next show.
I've got several ideas, and I'll narrow it down.
Let's go. So yeah, I've been coming up with a topic. So and this also concludes the printing press series that we started. But in case you missed it, Dungeon Dan, we had we talked about the printing press 2 shows ago, and then we talked about propaganda the Nash show, and it all led up to yellow journalism, which I think is the biggest thing that the printing press gave birth to. So this was a pretty fun series to do, really fun series, and it kind of coincides to today's modern world. So yeah, this was a fun one to do.
I always love this when we start with something like this really historical topic and this age topic, and then we bring in more examples, and then we just show how it's affecting the modern world, how the modern world is the same as the historical world, and there's all these parallels. Have a look back, and you can find things. It's amazing.
Thank you, Dungeon Dan. You're the man.
Thank you very much.
You're the man. So yeah, so next episode, Aiden is picking the topic. All right, buddy. So I'm going to put it into your capable hands, and I hope you guys will join us in 2 weeks on the next episode of the Age of Warfare podcast. And thank you for coming on over, Dungeon Dan. Glad that you were able to make it today. And as always, if you missed today's show, you can watch the replay in the Book Asylum group, and the video will be up on YouTube. All our videos get uploaded to YouTube on the official Book Asylum podcast YouTube channel. And it's not just the Age of Warfare podcast. Dungeon Dan does his book reviews. Jennifer Falk does her own interviews with other independent authors. So yeah, we got something. We got plenty of stuff for just about anyone. But if you like your meaty history, listening with some politics on the side, yeah, you might want to check out the Age of Warfare podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, which is on YouTube, or you can catch it on Facebook. But anyway, thank you for joining us. I am Centurion Angelus Maximus. That is my man, the Gate, Aiden Cordier. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, guys. We'll see you then. Take care, guys.
Take care. Bye-bye.